Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. With me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, well, I'm not in Oregon. I'm in Texas. And Texas is downright hot. It is hot, hot, hot. And I am really enjoying it though, because, I love the warm weather and it's a beautiful part of Texas that I'd never been to before. Shout out to both San Antonio and Austin. This week on the podcast, I'm going to be sharing an interview that I did recently over the summer and really enjoyed my conversation with Jessica Guerrieri. Before we get to that, though, I do want to remind you that More Sober October is coming in just a week and a half now. If you haven't already, you can sign up to be a part of More Sober October with the Alcohol Minimalists. There is a link in the show notes to the sign up page. You have to be on that email list to know about the Zoom links and to be included in the free coaching sessions. You can also learn more about it in the Alcohol Minimalist Facebook group, which is also always in the show notes. Sign up because we would love to have you join us. All right. This week, I am sharing this interview that I had with Jessica Guerrieri, and this is an unusual episode for me because typically I don't interview authors who do fiction work, but Jessica's book was really something that resonated with me because of the main character. The novel also won the Maurice Prize for Fiction from Jessica's alma mater, UC Davis, and has just been very widely positively reviewed as a debut novel. I think you'll really enjoy our conversation. It kind of went all around the whole structure of the book and why she wrote it the way she did, and also about mommy wine culture, which I think is something that many of us know a lot about. At least I certainly did in the years that I was working on changing my relationship with alcohol. It certainly was a part of what I think kept me over drinking for many years. And so I know there's a lot to take in here. Jessica is originally from the Bay Area, and she lives in Davis, California with her husband and 3 young daughters. Jessica has a background in teaching special education, but she left the field to pursue her career in writing. And her book, Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, is her debut novel. And she's got another one coming, and she and I actually talk about that as well. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Here it is, my interview with Jessica Guerrieri. Choose peace, everybody, and I will see you on Thursday. Good morning, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here on the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And I just want to ask you first, as we're diving into the book that you have written, as far as the way that you would describe yourself, would you first describe yourself as a novelist, a mother, an advocate, or a person in recovery? Which do you identify with? All of them, or what would first come to mind?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Actually, first and foremost, I actually identify as a person in recovery first.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is because nothing in my life would exist without my recovery. So I wouldn't be a mother, I wouldn't be a writer, I actually wouldn't be alive if I didn't have recovery. So I think for me, that is the thing that I identify with the most, and the thing that I'm most grateful for, given that I can show up for the other things in my life that I love so much.
Awesome. Well, okay. So if we could give a short synopsis in your own words, talk to me about the book and what your nutshell version of it would be.
Sure. Yeah. So the name of my book is Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, and it is women's book club fiction. And I wrote it. It is a sort of peek behind the curtain into what happens when you follow mommy wine culture all the way down to the end, meaning the narrative that we hear of motherhood is hard, therefore you should drink alcohol to cope with it. Well, what happens if we play that tape all the way out and a woman becomes addicted to an addictive substance, and then it sort of takes over all of the wonderful parts of her life, including motherhood, including her relationship with her family, including her relationship with, her closest person in her life, who's her sister-in-law. And what does that look like when you play that all the way out?
Talk to me about the decision to write it from a fiction or a novel perspective as opposed to a memoir or self-help book. Why did you go down this path?
Yeah, so we pitched this as women's book club fiction because oftentimes what we see is, I know for me, I've been a part of many book clubs my whole life. As
Mhm.
I became a mom and got a little bit older, I sort of noticed that book clubs became this glorified wine clubs where they wouldn't even open the book. They would use the book as a coaster for the drinks to pass around.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, why wouldn't we just go directly into the belly of the beast, so to speak? Because once they do actually open the book and read it, it's a very different experience when you're reading with a group of women and talking about as you relate to different characters or themes in the book than, say, if you are to be on your own sort of recovery journey and you're in a self-help section of Barnes and Noble and you're reading about addiction. So if you're doing that, you are in a specific place in your own identification of what is going on with you. But what happens if you're in a safe space with a community of women or readers and you start to identify with the main character who happens to be struggling with substance abuse, and it feels a lot safer to be able to say, like, hey, this actually sounds kind of familiar. And oh, it's not normal to drink before my kids' sporting events or to feel like I need to drink this to get through the day. It's also just a way to open a conversation about difficult things as it relates to motherhood and coping strategies, escapism, what we, have to use in order to get through the day, and why we feel the need to use things. So yeah, so that's why we decided ultimately, I could have written a memoir and I could have written something that was directly personal, but instead we opted for what we call autofiction, which is I pieced together portions that happened in real life, direct conversations, arguments between my husband and I verbatim,
Mhm.
um, but then also painted it in a fictionalized sense. And so it broadens the audience of who opens it up and who feels comfortable reading it. So that's why we did that.
Awesome. So in your author's note, you talked about being dismissed from jury duty and
Yeah.
how that experience really crystallized some of your own views on recovery.
Yeah.
So, how did that moment shape the book? How did that read into the book?
Yeah. So Jury duty is actually really funny. There's certain pivotal things that happen in my life that like sort of tie together. Jury duty is one of them. Actually, in early recovery, I got called for jury duty when I was a teacher, and I took it as an excuse to be able to sleep in and actually drink more the night before because I didn't have to teach. I
Go to
just had to
work. Yeah,
sit,
right.
right. I just had to sit in a box and like listen to boring things. And so that actually was leading up to the few weeks that catapulted my drinking into like the point of no return. So I actually attribute jury duty to like some pretty monumental experiences in my life. But the one that I got the farthest, I was in the voir dire questioning where you actually sit in the box, and I was in there for a while. And I was really shocked at the amount of personal questions that they're allowed to ask you in front of not only the person
Right.
that's on trial, but also everybody else that's in the room. They just really don't hold back. And obviously, I choose to live a very public life at this point. But one of the questions they asked was, have you ever been the victim of a crime? And so there's 12 of us sitting in the box at this point, and like I was shocked because I was the only one to raise my hand. And they said, they asked specifically what crime, and I said, well, I'm the survivor of sexual assault. And and then they said, well, do you want to go behind chambers to talk to further answer questions? Um, and this was like day 4. And like, do I want to pause for everyone to go
Right.
be private about this? And I said, no, I'm comfortable talking about it. And so the prosecutor asked me, do you believe that people show patterns of behavior that are more likely to repeat the same patterns, basically alluding to this was a drug trial and somebody had been caught with drugs and they were a repeat offender. And I said the answer that he did not want to hear, which is I'm living proof that I believe people are capable of change. I said I'm a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, and I am living proof. And so they dismissed me and thanked me for my service. Um, but I felt like this was an important thing to share because it is possible. It is possible to find recovery. There are no lost causes or hopelessness. And so it shaped this story because it's ultimately a message of hope. There's a lot of harrowing and gut punches inside the book, but like my story, ultimately it's one of hope and survival.
Yeah. And I think you worked hard in the book to balance both of those, the reality and the message of hope. Would
Right.
you? Yeah. I mean, so that was
That's
something that
that's
was,
the purpose of the recovery experience, right? Or the addictive experience. I know you're a child of a alcoholic, correct?
Mhm.
So it's not all darkness and horrors. There is light to it. Like look what you're doing now.
Yeah,
You've made it into something positive, and I think that there is something that should be said about that.
fantastic. Let's talk about Leah and Leah's world a little bit. One of
Hmm.
the things I loved about the book was her phantom life.
Mm.
It's a really striking concept and something that's very central to her character. It seems like and I appreciated it because a long time ago I read a book, and it was something that during the throes of early childhood or early motherhood for me, I could really identify with this. A writer wrote about this. She had a fantasy about like getting on a bus and driving, and escaping to Montana where she was going to be a waitress in a diner and like, show up in town and not have a name and be somebody totally different, right? This was her escape route when
Right?
she started to feel really overwhelmed in her own life. Like she's just like, oh, I'm just going to hop on that bus and go be a waitress in Montana.
Yep.
And so this phantom life that Leah held on, Leah talks about was resonated with me because that was something I could relate to.
Hmm.
Um, did you always know that was going to be central to her character? How did you, how did that come to you, the phantom life kind of idea?
Yeah, so I think every woman, if she's being truly honest with
Yeah, right.
herself, has an escape route in her head at any given moment.
Yeah.
If that's either for safety reasons, right? If there's somebody in a room that we are worried about, it's a survival tactic. But I also think in motherhood, I know for me, it's the fight or flight, and I want to run away when I feel overwhelmed. And that's as a person in recovery or just as a mom in general, because it can be really overwhelming. And so I wanted to present the phantom life idea with Leah, where she didn't, while she's deep inside of her own addiction, I needed to show that it's okay to feel like you're unsure if you like made the right decision, right? Like at any given day, sometimes, you can look around as a mother and be like, how did we get here? What
Right.
what is that? What is happening? And if I were to like envision what motherhood would have been, I would have had no idea, just as I would have no idea what recovery would have looked like or sobriety would have led me here. Um, but I think it's okay to examine that. The difference between Leah inside of her addiction is she longs for it, right? She's like lusting after this life. And that's truly the saddest part of addiction is that you're inside this glass cage and you can't participate in your own life. You can only look around and see like all the beautiful things that you have, and you can only appreciate them so much, but you can't interact with them. You can't like reach out and touch them. And so there's a moment, even this was true to my life, when I got clean from drugs and had been sober for a long time, where I just like was walking with one of my daughters, and I wrote about it in the book, and there are these like little flowers, and the flowers are upside down and they look like little like dancers, like little twirly dancers, and all of a sudden she started twirling her skirt to match them. And so we stood in the middle of the street and we twirled our skirts and we danced, and I lifted her up and twirled her around, and I thought, this is me participating in this life, able to physically touch my daughters and reach them in a way because I am sober, because I'm no longer inside the glass cage. And that's all I could ever wish for somebody that's in recovery or that's struggling with substance abuse, to actually participate in their own life.
I love that. It's wonderful. I love that. The imagery is really wonderful there too.
Thank you.
Um, some of the scenes that you have are, especially like maybe even at the beach, are very sensory.
Mhm.
So, how does that setting work for you as a storytelling piece, like the beach specifically?
Yeah. So I grew up 20 minutes from Half Moon Bay. This was actually the town that we spent most of our childhood in. We called it over the hill, like you just literally drove over a hill on Highway 1. And with my family, we would go to the beach pretty much every weekend. It was our happy place. It's still my happy place. And so I always knew I was going to write a story about the beach. My sister is a surfer, and she surfs and has been for years. And so, and also one of my like first loves was a surfer, and so I loved that whole idea of that culture and the thrill of it. And I'm not a surfer. I'm not a, extreme thrill seeker by any means, unless you count drugs and alcohol, which I guess you
Right.
could. But there's something so romantic about it and so powerful. And I loved the idea of Leah having like a healthy form of escapism in her life, because for me, my healthiest form was writing. And so she is channeling that. And even, in her deepest part of her disease, like she's surfing with her husband, and she's not able to do it in like and feel it in the real way that you're meant to. So the ocean for me and the imagery of it and the metaphor, the power of it behind it, it was always going to be focal to Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea.
Thank you for that explanation and the background on it. Hey, it's Molly, here to talk to you about Sunnyside. If you've listened to this show for any length of time, you know that Sunnyside is my number one recommendation for drinking apps that help you change your relationship with alcohol. I've been a Sunnyside partner for more than 3 years now. And one of the key reasons that I chose Sunnyside to be my app of choice is that they are really focused on continuous improvement, just like me. And for you, it is continuous improvement of the app in terms of how the customer is experiencing it. They've completely redesigned the progress tab from the ground up, which makes it easier for you to see your progress over time. They've introduced mini infographics to help you better see the big picture of drinks reduced and how dry days have added up since you joined Sunnyside. They have a dry day streak tracker now for those of you that are focused on taking a real extended break from drinking. And they intelligently surface trends in your data to highlight any positive things for you, and like a steady decrease in overall drinks over the course of time. These changes and these improvements are something that Sunnyside has continued to do ever since I started working with them. You can check it out over at sunnyside.co/Molly and get started on a 15-day free trial today. So let's talk about motherhood, because this is a very central theme in this book, and it's complicated in different ways, right? So there's Christine, Leah's mother-in-law, and I I had a lot of thoughts about, or a lot of I don't know how to explain that, feelings around that, because the relationship between Christine and Leah is complicated at best.
Mhm.
I mean, talk to me about your approach to writing about that relationship specifically.
Yeah. So the thing about alcoholism or addiction is you're never the villain of your own story. And ultimately, the substance and drinks are the villain. But it is so tempting to point the finger at the easiest target in front of you, right? When you're active in your drinking. And so for Leah, her easiest target is her mother-in-law. And why her mother-in-law? Because she represents all the things that she thought she was going to be as a mother, which is, able to do the beach days perfectly and pack the cucumber sandwiches and enjoy every minute of it and feel all the things she was supposed to feel and what she believes her mother-in-law was feeling in that time. And so she just resents her, and she resents everything that she represents. And so what we have is their relationship that could be such a trope, right? The daughter-in-law hating the mother-in-law and this,
Right.
tension-based relationship. But in reality, we have someone like Amy who is our very like steadfast, trustworthy, loyal character who seemingly loves Christine and sees good in her. So we have to start to question
Whose
Leah's
reality?
reality
Yeah.
and whether or not she's a reliable narrator. And so it just ups the ante, ups the tension to say, well, what Leah's presenting us, is that the full story? What is she so mad about? She has this beautiful life, this beautiful house, a husband who's trying his best. She has three healthy children. Um, they have extreme wealth. What are you complaining about? What is there to suffer? Like, why you're not suffering? And so her mother-in-law just holds up a mirror to herself, basically, and she's not comfortable. Leah's not comfortable looking at it.
Was the dynamic between Joni, the oldest daughter, and Christine, um, something that you experienced in your own life, or was that all fiction?
Yeah. Um, so I had I had a lovely relationship with my mother-in-law. when she was alive. Unfortunately, she passed away from complications of COVID, unexpectedly and tragically. And so when I married into the family, I very much had the same feelings of Leah, of just like, I don't know where my place is. I felt very insecure about motherhood because I had just gotten sober. I was 1 month sober when we found out we were pregnant with our first daughter. And so I was doing recovery and motherhood in tandem. And to me, my mother-in-law presented this woman who had four children under the age of 5. She was the PTO president. She made all the sandwiches. She did all the things. She created a family that everyone lives within 5 minutes of each other. And all 13 of the grandchildren under the age of 11, we see each other every day. Everybody plays together. So she created this like beautiful family system as the matriarch. And so to me, I was like, well, what am I doing? Like, who am I? And so I made her my scapegoat for a long time. And it wasn't until I really worked a program, I learned about my own insecurities in motherhood that I realized it had absolutely nothing to do with me, and nothing to do with her, and everything to do with me. And
Mhm.
so I started to let go of that. And in doing that, our relationship opened up, and I stopped being threatened by, you know, uh, her opinion or anybody else's opinion of motherhood and how I was doing. And so with my oldest daughter, because she's the oldest grandchild, it was a lot of pressure to like uh, I remember when she was born, we had all like 15 members of the family in after she was born, and every single person held her. And it was this beautiful like circle. We all like, encircled her with love, basically. But I was also a brand new mom, and I was like, oh my God, there's so many people touching my new baby. But I like had to kind of be like, oh, I guess I'm okay with this because it's
Right.
such a sweet thing. But I was like, I also just gave birth. Like, could you let me hold my baby? So yeah, there's a lot of it. A lot of it is very similar. But ultimately I actually wrote Amy and Christine's relationship as my love letter to my mother-in-law. And I rewrote it after she had passed, to show that like we had healed and we had these many years in my recovery, of a beautiful, honest relationship, just like Amy and Christine. And that's the one that I love and I'll hold in my heart forever.
Awesome. Do you think mothers today are still under a lot of pressure to be perfect, uh, even in 2025?
I mean, of course, I wish that mothers today would give themselves some grace. It's unfortunate that we are held to an impossible standard, but that's just the reality of it. But the truth is, if you love your children and you're giving them the best that you can possibly give them, this is all we can do, right? All we can really give is the best of what we have to offer. And the standard at which we're holding it up is an impossible standard. So, like most things, especially in recovery, I've learned this piece that I wish all mothers could have of acceptance, that it's like, I accept that this is the limitation. I mean, this morning, for instance, I will give you a hilarious real life example. Um, it is my husband's grandma's 90th birthday this morning, and his family arranged it. So at 7 a.m., we all, with all the cousins, all 13 cousins, between the ages of 4 and 11. We went over to her house. We brought donuts. We made cards. We celebrated her. Um, and this was before 7 a.m.
Right.
And I had to get ready for this.
Right.
I had to make it so my kids had everything ready to go. Um, there was so many pieces of the puzzle that had to happen. And it's like everybody's like I showed up and I was the only one wearing like real clothes
Right.
and pajamas and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, "Well, I have work after this and everything." And the reality of it is just like this is the best that we can do. If my kids came running in, I have a daughter that's in her room right now. She might come running in and she might say something and it's just like, "Well,
That's
there it is."
life.
And
Yep.
this is the reality of it. My dogs might start barking, but I've learned to just kind of let that go. And I wish that for other mothers because they are doing such a great job. Like they at the hardest task imaginable, which is raising the tiny humans.
Nice. You in the book, Leah's drinking is definitely a part of her daily life, right? It's not a lot of like big binge drinking episodes, but it's a daily use.
Yeah.
And that was definitely my story. You talked about my mommy wine culture. It's a big part of that daily use. Why was it important for you to portray that kind of specific alcohol use in the book? Was that mostly because of your own experience, or was it just, do you think that's an important storyline as well?
Yeah, so that's the storyline that actually was held as the most important because I wanted to show the realities of what that version of problematic drinking looks like because I think it's the one that's the least talked about. It's this, we hear a lot of like, oh, well, I'm not drinking alone, or I'm not drinking every day, or I'm not drinking, um, I'm not blacking out. Or there's like these like little rules that society has said, like X equals drinking problem. And so for Leah, like, I wanted to show what happens when you cannot get off the ride. And so that sensation itself where you're like, wait a minute, like the drink has become an extension of my body. It is something that I reach for, like I would take in a breath. And that is the most terrifying feeling you can possibly imagine because you don't want to be doing it. It is outside of your control and it's terrifying. And I thought there isn't really a book that I've read or a fictionalized story that I've heard where they're showing someone like Leah who is just a mom and she's like finds a reason to drink around everything because that's what's happening behind the scenes right now. That's,
Mhm.
I mean, universally, I could name off the top of my head a dozen women that have justified what would probably be considered problematic drinking because it's just like this is what we do. We have the drinks, we do it, and then you forget that it's not healthy, it's not a good coping strategy. It's actually making you more anxious, more depressed. Um, but that was what I wanted to show. Above everything else, I wanted to show the woman that isn't the stereotypical what we think of the like boozy housewife. You turn on Netflix, you see every single show where everybody's drinking left, right, and center, and it's in this beautiful, glamorized, larger than life way of social and fun and no, I needed to show the person that's just constantly refilling their glass and forgetting how is this even happening to begin with?
And that again resonated with me because of my own experience, my own lived experience with regarding my dependence or my use of alcohol. And one of the things that I think we align with together is the emphasis on psychological dependence versus physical dependence.
Right.
Um, Talk to me about why that was important for you to show.
Yes. So obviously, and I know you have everybody has their own interpretation, right? Like their own terminology. There's sober
Yeah.
curious, there's and I in my program, my 12-step program, they were very specific on certain terms and ways that you describe things and you are this way or you do this. And like inside the pandemic, I started to explore um like quit lit books and sort of tried to understand different methodologies just because everything isn't a one size fits all, right? And in that time too, I opened myself up to drugs, which is why I'm also a recovering drug addict. So it wasn't without consequences in my experience. But the thing that I learned in like physical dependency and mental, and there becomes a point where I truly feel, and this is my experience, and this is what I wanted to show with Leah, and I use this term, that you can get off the ride and then you can't get off the ride. And for me, genetically, and I think this is true for a lot of people with substance abuse, I was always going to be on the ride. Always. It's just, my family is from Ireland. It's just in my DNA. And also I have all of the isms of alcoholism, which is, just so many, that deep sense of otherness, like feeling like I don't belong, feeling like, and then all of a sudden drinking made me feel like here I am, I've arrived. And that's just like an innate thing. I think that was never going to change. But some people, I genuinely believe that they start to drink in a habitual way that it becomes problematic and becomes dependency. And I think what we're seeing and what I hope for and what I hope in my children and I hope in the next generation is that we're going to skip over all of this step right here. That is the, experimentation of should I, oh, do I like having a drink at 5 o'clock every day? Oh, I think I do. Oh, do I like having two? Do I like having three? Do I like having four? To alcohol just doesn't do anything for me. I'm just like not gonna have any. And then you've skipped you've skipped over that whole period. Um, but it's unless you're in it, it's hard to explain the like dependency feeling of it because it's the want versus the need. Um, when I was waking up hungover, and feeling sick to my stomach and shaking, I didn't want to go drink more alcohol, but I needed to do it because I was dependent upon it in order to be able to function. Um, and that's an example of the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you heard from people that have read your book? What has been really some of the most moving things that you've heard or people have shared with you when their experience of reading the book?
Yeah, this has been the best. This has been the best part, I have to say. I just get messages, like beautiful messages from people. I was at a book signing and I had a girl who was easily, young. She was in her 20s. She came up to me and said, I wanted to tell you, my mom died from this disease of alcoholism. She never found recovery, but in reading your book, I was able to gain an empathy and understanding for her that I wasn't able to get before. And it made me feel closer to her. And she's like, oh, and her name was Leah. I was like,
Wow. Wow.
oh, I was like, I don't know where I go from there.
Yeah.
Um, but honestly, the impact that it's had on people who either identify with Leah or they have loved ones that they're now able to empathize with, to me, that was always the goal. I wanted people to recognize the suffering that happens inside. Um, and that's the messaging that I'm getting back is people telling me I see something or I'm changing a problematic, I didn't actually realize that this had become a pattern and I kind of want to stop it, or I love the relationship between Amy and Leah, and it reminds me of my best friend, and she's struggling with something. Really, it just what's happened is people, I think because they know it's part of my story and I'm vulnerable about it, they share part of their story with me, and if you're ever a part of 12-step meetings or anything, that is the whole purpose, is you just share and then somebody else shares and then you feel connected. And so for me, it's basically become like my drug of choice is to like find ways to connect with other people and have them reach out to me and tell me their stories. And it helps keep me sober. So I can't think of anything better.
Nice. If a reader walks away with just one message from Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, what would you hope it is? What would you want it to be?
My hope would be that they recognize that they're not alone. Um, there's like a deep, unrelenting loneliness and ache that comes inside of um, drinking too much. I've never felt more disconnected from the world than when I was inside my alcoholism. And it was truly the loneliest I've ever been. Uh, and so in writing Leah's story, I wanted people to see themselves inside of her. And then ultimately, just like Leah was able to, find your find where you connect to other people or to other things. I have a lot of I'm married an introvert and I'm raising a few introverts and like people aren't their connection. Like that isn't their thing, but it's how do you stay tethered to the rest of this world in a way that feels purposeful? And and so drinking isn't the way that you stay tethered. It isn't the way that you connect. It's the way that you disconnect, and it's the way that you're outside of what really truly matters. And so the message that I always tell people, and it's in my author's note, is that alcohol isn't the magic. Like you are the magic. Everything that is good and whole and beautiful already exists within you. Alcohol isn't bringing it out of you, it's taking it away from you. And so don't forget that. Don't lose sight of that. You're the magic.
Wonderful. So, what is next for you? Are you already working on another book or another project?
Yes, actually. So when I signed with HarperCollins, I signed a two-book deal. And so my second book, it's called Both Can Be True, and it will be available in May of 2026. We are deep in edits right now. I've written it.
Fantastic.
It is we're working on the cover right now, and it's from dual perspective of two sisters. A local woman goes missing, and it sort of unites the sisters back together, and they have to work through their trauma and their childhood experiences. It's actually a deep meditation on recovery as opposed to active addiction. My first story, a lot of the feedback I got was they loved seeing truly what addiction looks like. But the healing part and the hope part is just a brief window
Right.
of time. And so I said, I'm up for the challenge. I have 12 years of sobriety, so I want to show what recovery looks like. How do you live as a mother in recovery? And just like in my story, drug relapse is part of that story. And so I wanted to kind of show that. I'm pulling from all real things that happened in my life and doing it again in autofiction. So that's both can be true, and it'll be out in May.
That is exciting. Well, maybe you'll come back and share that with us
I
when
would
you do.
love to. I would absolutely love
Awesome.
to.
All right, Jessica, where can people find your book, follow your work? What's the easiest way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I have a website, jessicaguerrieri.net, and that has my book tour information. I'm going to be in Florida in October at Books and Books in Coral Gables. That's the next stop on my tour. I am always on Instagram, Jessica Guerrieri author. You can find me, send me messages about reading the book, how you relate to it. I always love to get those. I always try and share them back in the world too. Yeah, so my website and Instagram is usually the easiest way, and then you can buy my book everywhere. Obviously, it's on Amazon. I also recommend bookstore.org, which will support local bookstores. Barnes and Noble has it, and you can request it at your local indie too. So
Perfect. I will link all of that in the show notes, folks, so you can make it easy. Jessica Guerrieri, thank you so much for being here today. It's been just a delight, and I can't wait for my listeners to read your book and certainly look forward to your next one as well.
thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going. If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.